On my 30th birthday, my relatives ridiculed me, labeling me a failure while presenting me with an enormous trophy for losers. My mother claimed I would never achieve anything of worth. My father derided my profession, and my sister shared it, all online. The following morning, I did something none of them anticipated. A week later, my phone was inundated with messages, 27 times a day, pleading, "Please respond, we require your assistance." So, yesterday marked my 30th birthday, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting anything extraordinary. I've never been fond of celebrations, particularly family ones. For the past 5 years, it has turned into this uncomfortable situation where my mum insists we gather at their home, my father complains about grocery expenses, and Annabelle behaves as if she's above it all. Each year, the same tired jokes resurface along with this bizarre tension. Truthfully, I often count down the minutes until I can leave. This year started off differently though. I awakened to a text from my mum that didn't even mention happy birthday. It simply read, "Don't be late, we have a surprise for you." I thought, great, it's either another pair of socks with my name misspelled or an odd family intervention. My family isn't known for subtlety. My father has always been the type to think that tough love equates to being a jerk. As for Annabelle, she's practically been the favoured child since we were young, so I've grown accustomed to being the butt of their jokes. Whatever. I arrived at their house around 6 p.m, already in a mood since the bus was delayed and my phone charger was malfunctioning, leaving me with about 15% battery. When I walked in, the atmosphere felt off. They were all in the kitchen, pretending that everything was normal, but Annabelle kept sneaking glances at her phone, suppressing laughter, and my father was staring at me as if daring me to comment. My mum fussed with decorations, which was quite uncharacteristic of her, and there was this absurd party hat with a large L on it placed at my seat at the table. I asked what the L stood for, and she simply replied, "Oh, just a family joke. You'll see." We had dinner, and the small talk was as uncomfortable as usual. Annabelle kept bragging about her latest achievement. She always had one. And my father made little jabs about how I must be accustomed to eating budget meals and living like a student. I tuned it out, scrolling through notifications surreptitiously. My mum had already consumed 3 glasses of wine, meaning she was about to get forthright with her opinions. After dinner, they presented me with a massive box, far too large for anything ordinary. Mum was grinning like she had cracked world peace, while Annabelle held her phone up recording. I knew I was being set up, but I opened the box anyway. Inside was a gigantic shiny trophy, roughly the size of a small dog, with "loser" engraved in ugly block letters. Beneath it was a fake diploma printed on computer paper that read, "Most underachieving son," complete with a little loser sash, as if I were in some hellish pageant. I sat there, clutching the trophy, as everyone erupted in laughter. My father babbled on about how this was all in good humour and might inspire me, while my mum shared an embarrassing tale about how I never finish anything. She relished telling that story, and Annabelle was filming the entire ordeal, narrating it for her Instagram stories. I could see her friends reacting live as she sent them clips, and there I was, holding a literal loser trophy at my own birthday dinner. When I asked them to stop, they doubled down. Dad quipped, "Someone's feeling sensitive tonight," while Mum insisted, "We just want you to see the truth." Annabelle started reading out comments from her friends, laughing about how Remy's breakdown would be unforgettable, all while showcasing my expression on her phone and declaring I looked iconic, like a meme. She had always been like this, needing to be the center of attention, even at my expense. I understood their behavior. They viewed me as a continual disappointment for never conforming to their expectations. Even when we were younger, Annabelle received rewards for mocking me, as if it were a family sport. Dad's mantra is that you have to be a winner, or you're nothing, leaving no space for anything else. I slammed the trophy down and told them I was fed up. Mum attempted to laugh it off, but I could see she was embarrassed by how her joke had backfired. Dad stood up, getting in my face, ranting about how I was proving their point, and that real men don't run away from a little ribbing. He shoved my shoulder, not hard, but enough for me to realize he wanted to escalate things. I told him to step back, and Annabelle was relishing it, recording the whole scene while saying she would tag me because everyone needs to see what a sore loser looks like. I reached for her phone to stop her, but she jerked it back and shoved me hard enough to make me stagger into a chair. Dad demanded I leave if I couldn't handle a joke, while Mum remained silent, acting like she was the victim. I picked up my jacket and the ridiculous sash, tossing them to the floor as I made my exit. Annabelle yelled after me that perhaps I would secure a real life before I turned 40, while I heard Dad mutter something about today's youth, and Mum was already on her phone, likely texting friends about how I ruined everything. I slammed the door behind me, and no one followed me outside. It was dark, and the streets were deserted. I stood there for a moment, trying to comprehend why I even bothered. I checked my phone and saw Annabelle's story already filled with comments from people I barely knew, just randoms laughing about Remy's epic failure. I wanted to walk away and never come back, but then I recalled that I was the reason they had any online presence. The only reason Mum's side hustle, Dad's old man club, and Annabelle's influencer material even functioned was because I set it all up and maintained it for free. They had never bothered to learn any of it. They assumed I would handle it because it wasn't real work after all. I arrived home, plugged in my phone, and began writing, because, to be honest, I was furious. I had tolerated their nonsense for years, but this was a whole new level. I'm not the loser here, and I refuse to just accept it. Let's just say I have a few plans, and they aren't going to like what comes next. I'm not sure yet what I'll do, but I know this. They will remember this birthday, not for the trophy. Update soon if anyone is interested. Update 1. I got little sleep that night. I just scrolled through random content and watched old YouTube videos to distract myself, but it was hard not to replay that entire dinner in my mind, especially after Annabelle's post began receiving comments from people I barely knew. I think what incensed me the most was how casual she was acting about it, as if it were just another meme for her feed. I understood she'd always been the protagonist in her own tale, but it still stung. The next morning, I woke to 15 unread messages in our family chat. The initial messages were just my mum pretending nothing happened, reiterating how lovely it was to have everyone together and hoping I took my trophy home. Things took a turn, though, when Annabelle started posting screenshots of her friends, reactions, laughing about how they couldn't believe I actually stormed out. My dad joined in with a rant about how real adults don't let their feelings get hurt by jokes. It was as if they were trying to convince themselves that I was the issue, not them, which wasn't anything new at this point. I let the messages accumulate, ignored phone calls, and only checked my private Insta, thankfully. Instead, I made coffee and contemplated how tired I was of supporting them. We never discussed it, but I managed all their digital operations, Mum's little storefront, Dad's hobby projects, Annabelle's side hustle. I set everything up, paid for half the domains, and was the only one who understood the passwords and how the back end functions. I suppose I had always felt at least I was useful for something, right? But after last night, I was over it. Annabelle called, but I let it go to voicemail. She texted right after, sending some nonsense about how it was just a joke and that I needed to relax. I muted her for 8 hours, and then my mum messaged again, asking if I would come by to assist with her store because the website was malfunctioning. I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into the admin panel and changed the passwords for everything: Mum's site, Dad's Endeavour, Annabelle's platform. I didn't take anything down just yet. I simply cut off all their access and set their homepages to say, under maintenance, contact admin. It wasn't dramatic, it was just irritating. I knew it would disrupt any orders or whatever, but I had no care. They didn't pay me, they didn't respect me. So why should I continue being obliging? By noon, my phone buzzed every 10 minutes. Annabelle was blowing up my messenger, switching to every possible platform. I noticed some missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, likely from her friends or business associates. Dad sent 3 texts in a row, all in capital letters, saying this wasn't a joke and that I needed to fix it immediately. I merely observed the incoming messages, completed my coffee, and started to clean my apartment. Strangely, it was satisfying not responding. By late afternoon, Mum sent another message sounding a tad desperate, asking if I could just come over for a moment to look at her laptop, as she couldn't print invoices. I knew precisely why she was struggling. I had adjusted the email forwarding to bounce. She tried calling again, but I didn't answer. Then she texted again, claiming she was receiving refund requests. I almost felt sympathetic, but then remembered the trophy and her irritatingly smug face, and that sense of compassion vanished. Annabelle began threatening me, stating, "If you don't fix this, I'll tell everyone you're sabotaging my business." I replied, "It's my work, my rules." She then sent me a middle finger emoji, classic Annabelle. Next, she tried to guilt trip me, saying I was ruining everything, how she had meetings scheduled, and now she looked foolish. I reminded her that she filmed the entire debacle. She replied with, "Get over yourself." I blocked her for the rest of the day. Dad adopted a different tactic, sending me a voice message about how family is family and you don't abandon people. He called me childish, saying I owed it to them since they had always been there for me. I deleted it. He never apologizes, not even a hint. He believes being a dad means winning arguments and asserting his correctness, rather than respecting others. The real kicker came around 5 o'clock when Mum left a voicemail, sounding as if she were about to cry. She expressed that she never meant to hurt me, but then pivoted to talk about how I had to consider the consequences of my actions, insisting that people were depending on me. She always does this, making her theatrics about everyone else, as if my refusal to assist was ruining the entire family. I just deleted her message without listening to the end. I decided to take a walk and ran into my neighbor, Tessa. We're not close but exchange pleasantries sometimes. She asked if I was all right, since she heard shouting from my apartment. The prior night, I hadn't even realized my door slam had been that loud. I simply said it was family matters, and she gave me a knowing look, as if she understood. I suspect everyone has their version of this, to be honest. Nothing special. When I returned, I saw that Annabelle had attempted to call me from 3 different numbers. I received a message from her boyfriend, Daisy, who's generally been decent to me. He mentioned Annabelle was freaking out and asked if I was upset or something. I simply replied, "Not your problem, but thanks." He expressed he felt stuck in the middle, a sentiment I could believe. Finally, I sat down and began drafting a list. I wasn't going to ignore them. I would make them genuinely experience the consequences this time. I was the only reason they had any digital presence, and they treated me like I was irrelevant. Not anymore. I drafted an invoice for all the hours I had spent addressing Mum's assorted tech issues, making updates for Dad, and building Annabelle's projects from scratch. I set the rates high because why not? I attached a list detailing everything. I controlled all the accounts and the passwords. I dispatched it to our family email thread, adding a note. Until paid in full, everything remains down. I knew it would aggravate them, but I didn't care. I was no longer their free labor. 10 minutes later, Dad called. I answered, just to hear what he would say. He was furious, yelling that I was blackmailing my own family. I retorted that it wasn't blackmail, it was business. He hung up. Mum sent a message saying she couldn't believe I would do this to her. I simply replied, "Believe it." Annabelle took an hour to respond, but eventually texted, "Fine, how much?" I forwarded the invoice, adding late fees for each day it remained unpaid. I spent the rest of the night ignoring their calls. I posted a story on my own Instagram, a photo of the loser trophy with the caption, "Never bet against the disappointment." Only about 6 people saw it, but whatever. It felt liberating. Just before going to bed, I noticed an email from Dad, carbon copied to my mum and Annabelle, stating they were considering legal action if I didn't rectify everything. I chuckled. It's not like they would actually follow through. If they wanted to play games, I could play too. I also remembered it wasn't my responsibility to bail them out anymore. Honestly, I was unsure what would happen next. Part of me wondered if I had gone too far, but mostly I felt empowered for standing up for myself this time. I wouldn't grant them another inch. If they wanted to label me the loser, let's see how they fare without me. I'll post updates if anything changes, but I believe they're finally beginning to understand. Final update. Here's the part I never anticipated. Not how rapidly my phone filled with notifications, but how surreal it became. I woke up that morning to a call from Annabelle. Not a text, not a DM, but an actual phone call at around 7 a.m. I let it ring. She called again, then again. By the time I finished showering, I had received double-digit calls. I scrolled through my phone to find 27 missed calls, all from them within the last 24 hours. No exaggeration. I counted to confirm I wasn't imagining things. First, Mum called, then Dad, followed by Annabelle, all in a shift-like manner. I started muting notifications, but it kept buzzing incessantly. I barely had time for coffee before Dad bombarded me with voicemails, declaring it was urgent, instructing me to call him back, insisting they required my assistance. It almost sounded comical if you didn't know them. The strangest part was that it wasn't just them. The chaos seeped into my own life. I received messages from 3 different individuals in Mom's book club asking if I could please fix the website since she was so upset. Dad's old buddies began emailing, some politely, others obviously echoing whatever Dad told them. Annabelle's friends popped up in my DMs, some of them acting like I was being cruel, while a few others were curious about what she had done. One even offered me money to make her stop panicking. It had inexplicably turned into everyone's circus. I realized that what shifted for them was the auto-payments bouncing. Mum sent a lengthy, rambling email expressing her newfound recognition of how much I did for her, conveying her embarrassment as people discussed her, suggesting she had lost control. She lamented that she couldn't sell anything and had been hit with refund demands, feeling ashamed in front of her friends. Dad's tone morphed from anger to desperation. He texted me, lamenting that I was ruining his reputation and that people were starting to ask questions. At one point, he even said, "I never thought you'd do this to your own family," as if I hadn't been saying for years that they needed to compensate me or manage things themselves. Only Annabelle got specifically direct with me. She called, left 2 voicemails, then texted that her project had collapsed and she urgently needed a solution. In contrast to her usual demeanor, she dropped the threats and resorted to begging, confessing, "I'll pay, just please fix it. I'm desperate." It was the first time I had ever seen her abandon her cool girl facade. She even showed up at my apartment, banging on the door, but I only told her through the door to head home. She kicked the door in frustration and left. I stayed inside, listening, just waiting to see if she would attempt to come back. She didn't. Later that evening, Mom sent a message essentially admitting she was sorry for the dinner, but immediately followed it with, "Please, I need this. Everyone's angry with me." There was no authentic apology, just that I was making her appear bad. Dad recorded another voicemail, sounding unlike himself, simply stating, "We can discuss terms." I saved that voicemail. Throughout all this, I kept expecting them to revert to anger or attempt some legal tactic, but they didn't. They merely continued calling, texting, and emailing me, as if by incessantly saying it, I would eventually yield. I didn't. Instead, I prepared another formal email, reattaching the invoice and detailing my responsibilities. Honestly, it was oddly satisfying to see all that information laid out. I noted that for every day they waited, the late fees would compound, and I stated that if they wanted their access restored, they would need to pay up front. No more, "we will compensate later" nonsense. I CC'd Annabelle's business email, just to emphasize my point. Dad replied with a rant, accusing me of destroying the family's name and tarnishing their reputations. I told him I was merely taking care of my own affairs. He declared that if I didn't restore his accounts by morning, I would be done in this family. I replied, "Fine by me." He hung up. Mum left yet another voicemail, this time actually crying, sharing how she couldn't sleep or eat because people were gossiping about her. She claimed she was ashamed and warned me I would regret this, suggesting I was abandoning everyone who ever loved me. I deleted that without listening to the end. I was no longer believing her victim narrative. Annabelle finally called again, not shouting this time, just furious. She complained that her brand was suffering, people were unfollowing her, and she was losing income. She tried to negotiate, stating she would pay me, but only if I fixed everything first. I maintained my stance, up front or nothing. She labeled me a jerk and hung up. Then she texted that I would regret this. I simply replied with a thumbs up emoji. By day 4, Dad sent another email, this time involving his old club friends, attempting to provoke shame in me to fix things. A few of them actually reached out, asking what was happening. I just wrote back that I didn't work for free anymore and left it at that. Annabelle's supporters turned on her, publicly scrutinizing her situation, some even tagging me, which was kind of awkward, especially since some of them used to be my friends. But I refused to engage in their drama. As days progressed, I noticed pressure mounting on them. Mum stopped with the guilt tactics and shifted to anger, sending me texts in all caps about legal repercussions and insisting I would regret this decision. Dad remained silent during this time. Annabelle attempted to send her boyfriend over in an effort to reason with me, but I wouldn't let him in. I simply told him to go home, and he appeared awkward and embarrassed, not even attempting to argue. Soon, I began receiving direct messages from people within their social circles, strangers wanting to learn what transpired, or suggesting I ought to be the bigger person. Funny how no one cared when they were ridiculing me, but now that chaos had ensued, I was the villain. I ignored most of those messages, except for one individual who tried to intimidate me with legal threats. I sent him a copy of the agreement Dad signed when I initially set everything up, stating it was all documented. He left me on red. That night, I received a new message from Mom. A single line. "Please, Remington, we need you." I didn't reply. Instead, I went for a walk, attempting to clear my thoughts. The city felt ordinary. People were out with their dogs. Kids were riding bikes. Someone was blasting music from a car. This drama felt so small in comparison. Honestly, I almost laughed, thinking about how much energy my family expended to preserve their egos. When I returned, more missed. Calls and texts awaited, nothing out of the ordinary. I sat down to prepare a final notice, stipulating that they needed to pay the invoice in full, alongside late fees, or everything would remain offline permanently, and I would be done for good. I dispatched that to all three of them, blocking their replies so they couldn't provoke another argument. I made it clear this was about business, not family, no more playing the game on their terms. What's astonishing is that I don't even feel guilty. I've been carrying their burdens for so long, and nobody ever acknowledged how I felt, only that their systems functioned. Now, they would finally experience what it meant to have me step back. I'm not fixing anything until they pay and apologize, and I'm indifferent to how long that takes. Tomorrow is supposedly the day the next wave of auto payments will bounce. Let's see how they manage it when their cards get declined, and they can't even log in to rectify the situation. I'm finished doing favors for those who treat me like a joke. I'll provide updates if anything shifts, but honestly, I believe they're at last starting to comprehend. Final update. So here's the part I didn't foresee. Not just how quickly my phone blew up, but how bizarre it became, almost surreal. I woke up that morning to a call from Annabelle. Not a text, not a DM, but a genuine call at around 7 a.m. I ignored it. She called again, then again. By the time I got out of the shower, it had turned into a double-digit frenzy. I scrolled to discover 27 missed calls from them, all in the last 24 hours. No exaggeration. I counted to assure myself I wasn't going crazy. First, it was my mom calling, then Dad, followed by Annabelle, then all three in a group call. It felt like they were taking shifts. I began muting notifications, yet it felt like a constant bombardment. I couldn't even grab a coffee before Dad's voicemails started piling up, stating it was urgent and demanding I return his call because they needed my support. If you didn't know these people, it would seem humorous. The strangest part was it wasn't just them. Their issues were spilling over into my world. I received messages from 3 different members of Mum's book club, pleading with me to rectify the website issues since she had been so distraught. Dad's old friends began emailing me, some politely and others blatantly echoing Dad's tirade. Annabelle's friends popped up in my DMs too, some accusing me of being insensitive, while others sought clarification on what she did. One of them even offered me money to make her stop panicking. Somehow, it transformed into everyone's debacle. I realized the turning point came when their auto payments failed. Mum sent a lengthy, rambling email, expressing newfound appreciation for all the work I did, lamenting how people spoke about her as if she lost control. She claimed she couldn't sell anything, facing refund requests and feeling ashamed in front of her peers. Dad's tone shifted from anger to panic, texting me that I was ruining his reputation and that inquiries were flying around. At one point, he actually mentioned, "I never thought you'd do this to your own family," as if I hadn't been saying for ages that they needed to pay me or figure it out without my help. Annabelle was the only one who became overtly direct, leaving 2 voicemails and ultimately texting that her project was failing and she urgently needed a solution. She discarded the threats, openly begging, stating, "I'll pay, just please fix it. I'm desperate." It was a first witnessing her losing the cool girl act completely. She showed up at my apartment, banging on the door. I told her from behind to head home. She kicked the door in frustration and left. I stood inside, waiting to see if she would come back. She didn't. That evening, Mom texted me, basically admitting her fault about the dinner, but immediately followed that with, Please, I need this. Everyone's furious with me." There was no genuine apology, simply an assertion that I was making her situation worse. Dad left another voicemail that didn't sound like him, simply saying, We can discuss terms. I saved that voice message. I had anticipated them reverting back to anger or attempting some legal tactic, but they didn't. Instead, they kept calling, texting, and emailing me, as if by continually pleading, I would ultimately yield. I remained resolute. Instead, I prepared a final email, reattaching that invoice while itemizing my responsibilities. Honestly, it was oddly gratifying to see it all documented. I specified that for each day they delayed, the late fee would increase, and noted that if they desired their access restored, it required upfront payment. No more promises of, "We'll pay later." I even CC'd Annabelle's business email just to underline my point. Dad replied with an emotional rant, condemning me for destroying the family name and damaging their reputations. I told him I was simply focusing on my own. He claimed if I didn't restore his accounts by morning, I would be done in this family. I told him that suited me just fine. He slammed the phone down. Mum left a voicemail that evening, this one filled with tears, claiming she couldn't sleep or eat. She expressed she felt embarrassed and mentioned the gossip surrounding her. She said I would regret this and was turning my back on everyone who had ever cared for me. I deleted that message without listening to the end. I refused to see her as the victim anymore. Finally, Annabelle reached out, not in a yelling fit, but in anger, lamenting that her brand was plummeting, with people unfollowing her and losing revenue. She tried to say she'd compensate me, but only if I restored everything first. I maintained my stance, upfront payment or nothing. Annabelle called me a jerk before hanging up. Then she texted, "You'll regret this." I merely replied, with a thumbs up emoji. By day 4, Dad had sent yet another email, this time involving his acquaintances, trying to manipulate me into assisting them again. Several of his friends reached out, asking what had transpired. I simply replied I didn't work for free anymore and left it at that. Annabelle's friends turned on her, openly questioning her actions and tagging me, which was somewhat awkward, since some of them had been friends of mine. Regardless, I decided not to engage in their drama. As the days passed, I noticed a shift in their behavior, where Mum ceased her guilt tactics and opted for outrage, sending all caps messages about legal ramifications and ordering me to take action. Dad had gone silent. Annabelle even tried sending her boyfriend over, attempting to act as a peacemaker, but I wouldn't let him in and asked him to go home instead. He appeared somewhat embarrassed and didn't even try to argue. I started receiving direct messages from their social circle, strangers interested in my side of the story or suggesting I should be the bigger person. Funny how no one showed concern when they laughed at my expense. Yet now that issues had arisen, I was the perpetrator. I disregarded most of them, save for one individual threatening me with legal action. I sent him the agreement Dad signed. When I initially set everything up, pointing out it was all documented, he left me on red. That night, a new message from Mom arrived. A singular line. "Please, Remington, we need you." I didn't respond. Instead, I took a walk to clear my head. The city felt normal. People walked their dogs, children rode, their bicycles, music blared from a car. This drama seemed utterly insignificant. Honestly, I almost chuckled, reflecting on the wasted energy my family exerted on maintaining their pride. Upon returning home, I observed more missed calls and messages awaiting, a routine of the same strain. I sat down and began drafting a final notice. They needed to pay the invoice in full, including late fees, or everything would stay offline permanently, and I would sever ties for good. I sent this to all 3 of them, blocking their ability to reply, ensuring they could not initiate another quarrel. I made it explicit. This was business, not family. No more participation on their terms. The surprising aspect is that I didn't even feel remorse. I felt liberated from carrying their burdens for so long, during which they ignored my well-being as long as their operations ran smoothly. Now they would firsthand experience the ramifications of my absence. I refuse to resolve anything until they pay and offer genuine apologies, and I'm indifferent to how long that takes. Tomorrow is supposedly the day the next set of auto payments will bounce. Let's see how they react when their cards are declined. And they can't even log in to remedy the situation. I'm finished doing favors for people who treat me as a joke. I'll provide updates if anything shifts, but I have a strong feeling they're finally starting to grasp the gravity of the situation.